This ride is only one of two of its kind. Tornado has been operating at Parque de Atracciones in Madrid, Spain since 1999. It's an Intamin inverted roller coaster. I was particularly excited to experience this ride for my first time because I was very familiar with some of Intamin's launched inverted roller coasters, such as their Impulses or Volcano the Blast coaster at King's Dominion. But this ride has a lift hill. The only other one that's like that is located at Sarkanemi in Finland, and this one came first. And because I was such a huge fan of Volcano, I loved the forces, I loved how the different inversions felt. I was curious how this one would go. And well, it's something, I'll say that. This is going to be my full in-depth review of Tornado. I'm going to talk about the ride experience, everything that you can expect with it. So first off, when you enter the park, you're going to want to make your way all the way to the back. That's where Tornado is. And because it only stands at a height of 98 feet, it's not an attraction that you can prominently see in their skyline. It's definitely tucked back there, but it has its own little plaza. So you can really get right up next to it. And I think one of the first things that you'll notice is how bizarre of a ride this looks. When I say something is overbuilt, I mean there are so many supports for this ride, it is like, wow. I'm not a structural engineer, but I've seen some of these same maneuvers done with way less supports. So I see this ride and I'm like, this really is not the most appealing ride to look at. As you enter the queue, you'll probably have to wait a decent amount of time for this ride. They typically run it with one train. And from my experiences at the park, they also want it to be fully loaded. So if you go on a quieter day, they'll often wait for more people to come before they dispatch. They want it to either be fully loaded or as close to loaded as possible, which also can mean slower dispatch times. There's 24 passengers per train. Riders sit 2 across, so that's 12 rows. It's a long train for sure. And the restraint setup is identical to some of the other Intamin inverted roller coasters. So you pull down that over-the-shoulder restraint, there's a seatbelt. And as you dispatch out of the station, you'll start your climb up to the top. Be sure to look out to your left-hand side as you're doing that. There are some beautiful views of Madrid out there. It is awesome. And as you reach the top, you'll level out and then take this big swooping drop to the left. You're banked just slightly to the side and then you gradually descend down to the ground. This is where you'll hit your maximum speed of 50 miles per hour and then you head into your first vertical loop. Tornado features 3 inversions and 2 of them are vertical loops. If you can only ride this once, I definitely recommend sitting towards the back. In the front, when you hit this loop, you'll like stall out because you're waiting for the rest of the train to catch up because it's so long. So it feels like overall the back has better pacing. It is also significantly smoother. For whatever reason, the front of this ride is shaky. We took a ride in the back while some of our friends did the front, and we came off having fundamentally different ride experiences. We were way more positive about it than they were. It seems like the front of the train takes all the force, and it makes for an unpleasant ride experience. The other rows don't seem to be that rough. Like, it's not perfect, but it's tolerable. But regardless, I suggest that you keep your head forward so you can just avoid any potential headbanging. After this vertical loop, you have this very long, drawn-out bank turn to the right, and then you head into a second vertical loop. The sensations of this inversion feel almost identical to the first one. One thing I will point out, though, is this ride is a little bit of a terrain coaster. It's located on a slant, so like as you're walking towards the entrance, you'll be walking downwards. So there are some moments, like the bottom of this vertical loop here, where like they had to carve out into the ground a gap to accommodate for this train. So that's pretty cool. There's another bank turn to the right here, and then you get thrown into your final inversion. This is a corkscrew. There's not a ton of whip to this, but I'd say overall it is a bit more exciting than the vertical loops. You'll head into a bank turn to the left, and then you'll enter a big, long, swooping helix to end things out. This is a very drawn-out moment, gradually descending down towards the ground, and then you bank to your left into the brakes. Overall, our impressions of Tornado were nothing super memorable. The ride is very intriguing because it's one of only 2 of its kind, but the ride experience as a whole is kind of plain. It feels like the train just meanders through the layout. It pulls decent forces at times, but nothing crazy. I'd say the strongest moments of G's were mainly around the loops and then the helix at the end. But those overbanks are kind of slow. Like even when I think about like the big roller coasters, specifically in the Madrid area, this is one I usually forget about. So it's easy to see why not too many of these traditional Intamin inverted roller coasters were built. They just got lost in the coaster scene, especially when you compare them to B&M's much more successful inverts. Those caught on and started popping up everywhere. These did not. I have heard that the one in Finland is more enjoyable. That actually has inline twists, which are very similar to those moments that you had on Volcano, which I really liked. So I hopefully look forward to getting on that one day. But Tornado did really kind of leave me disappointed because I was a big fan of Volcano. And so you have to set your expectations right with this, that even though they had the same sort of train design, they do not feel similar. They're not comparable. So for Tornado's final score, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. Personally, I didn't think it was bad. I know some people who are not a huge fan of it, but I think it is very, very mediocre. It's a fine addition to this park. It's a supporting ride in their lineup, but it's not a headliner, and I don't think it's really meant to be. Ride it once, maybe twice if you want to experience both the front and the back, but even the back, which I think is better, still is not amazing. Because it's not like the ride does anything inherently wrong besides like the obvious shake. It's just nothing of what it does do is all that impressive. But those are just my thoughts on Tornado at Parque de Atracciones in Madrid, Spain. Let me know down in the comments below if you agree with the points that I brought up, and of course stay tuned for more reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.